I've always liked going camping to get away from the noise of typical life. I felt more linked to nature than anywhere else. The silence, the sound of trees rustling in the wind, and the crackle of a campfire all did that for me. Deep in the woods, away from people, there's always a feeling of being vulnerable, even though it seems peaceful. After watching videos from different camping trips, I realized that the experiences caught on camera are often better than the ones had in real life. There are 6 people I'll never forget meeting. They made me wonder what was really out there in the wild. The first meeting took place while the person was camping alone in the heart of the Appalachians. The night was quiet and clear. When I set up my camera to record the fire burning under the stars, I was hoping to catch some wildlife, or even the howl of a wolf far away. Around midnight, I woke to a strange noise, like the soft crunch of leaves as though something was walking around my tent. I grabbed my flashlight right away and shined it outside, but there was nothing there. I brushed it off, thinking it was just an animal, and went back to sleep. When I reviewed the video the next morning, my heart sank. In the background, about 20 feet from my tent, there was a shadow, a tall, humanoid figure standing totally still. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. Just stood there watching me. For over 20 minutes, it stayed in the same spot before slowly walking off into the trees. The way it moved was strange, almost like it was floating. Whatever it was, it didn't leave any tracks. I still don't know what it was or how long it took me to wake up. The second meeting was a group trip with a few friends. We chose to camp near a lake known for its calm. As the sun set, we lit a fire and set up our cameras to record the beautiful view. Everything was going easily until around 3 a.m., when I woke up to what I thought was the wind talking through the trees. But it wasn't just wind, it was voice. I quietly unzipped my tent and peeked outside. The fire had died down, and the moonlight cast long shadows across the area. The whispering continued, soft and repetitive, like someone was singing just out of sight. I couldn't make out any words, but the tone was eerie and evil. The next morning we checked the footage, expecting to hear the wind, but what we caught was far more troubling. There were distinct voices in the recording, weak but clear enough to send chills down our spines. The voices weren't speaking in any language we could recognize. As we fast-forwarded through the film, the shouting got louder, but nothing showed on camera. We packed up and left that morning, and none of us have camped at that lake since. On another trip, my buddy Chris and I went out to a remote camping spot in Northern California. The place was meant to be untouched by people, a pure slice of forest. We set up camp and, as usual, left our cameras going overnight. Around 2 a.m., I heard Chris call out to me, his voice anxious. I stumbled out of my tent to find him standing at the edge of the opening, flashlight aiming at the woods. "Did you see that?" he whispered. I hadn't seen anything, but Chris swore he saw a man standing just beyond the tree line watching us. We scanned the woods for several minutes but found nothing. The next morning, we checked the tape, and my blood ran cold. A man stood at the edge of the camera's view, partly hidden by trees. He was standing in the dark, wearing what looked like an old, torn coat. His face was hidden by the darkness, but the way he stood there, perfectly still, sent chills down my spine. He was there for hours, never moving, never making a sound, just watching us. The scary part? There were no tracks, no signs that anyone had been there. We packed up and left, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the man was still watching us even after we were long gone. This meeting happened in a forest known for strange events. A few of us had heard reports of strange sounds coming from deep within the woods, so naturally we chose to explore. We set up camp near the reported area, with our cameras going in hopes of catching something strange. Around midnight we all heard it, the faint sound of a child crying. It was far away at first, but as time passed the crying got louder, more urgent. It didn't make sense. There were no other camps close, and we were miles from any town or house. We debated going to look for the child, but something about the sound felt wrong. We stayed put, but the crying continued for nearly an hour, echoing through the trees. The next morning, we checked the tape, and sure enough, the crying was there, crystal clear. But what made it truly frightening was that, in the background, there were light footsteps circling our campground. However, the exterior showed no signs of movement. No children, no footprints, nothing. To this day, I wonder if it was a lost ghost forever wandering the woods looking for help that would never come. This meeting happened during a summer camping trip with my girlfriend. We had set up a small campfire and were enjoying the peaceful night. My camera was set up on a stand, catching the fire and the nearby woods. As the fire died down, the smoke began to rise in thick, roiling plumes. It was hypnotic, but after a while I started to notice something strange. The smoke appeared to form a person shape. At first, I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks on me, but the figure got more defined. It looked like a person standing in smoke, their face featureless, their body transparent. I called my girlfriend over and she saw it too. We stared in amazement as the figure floated there, moving slightly but never disappearing. After a few minutes, it disappeared entirely, as though it had never been there. The next morning, we reviewed the video. What we caught was amazing. The person in the smoke was clear as day, standing just a few feet from us, watching. And just before it vanished, it seemed to lean forward, as if saying something. We couldn't make out any words, but the picture haunted us for weeks. The third meeting is by far the most upsetting. I was camping alone in the Rockies, miles away from any human touch. The night was calm, the stars bright, and my camera was set up to catch the fire in the nearby bush. At around 1 a.m., I heard moving in the woods. I assumed it was an animal and didn't think much of it, but the noise grew closer and more frequent. I grabbed my flashlight and searched the area, but saw nothing. When I checked the tape the next day, I noticed something strange in the background. Just beyond the fire's light, there were two sparkling eyes, staring straight at me. They weren't animal eyes. They were too big, too human. The eyes blinked slowly, watching me for several minutes before disappearing into the darkness. The worst part? As I studied the tape frame by frame, I noticed that the eyes weren't fixed. They moved, closer and closer, until they were just outside the fire's glow. Then, in one shot, the eyes were gone and the noise stopped. I packed up and left that morning, and I've never camped alone since. These 6 encounters left me with a deep sense of unease. They made me understand that the forest isn't as empty as it seems. There are things out there, things we can't explain, things we may never understand. And sometimes those things are watching, waiting for the right moment to make themselves known. But here's a question for you. Why do we find the unknown so terrifying, especially in places like the wilderness? Is it the fear of what we cannot see, or the unsettling idea that there may be things in the world that defy explanation and logic?